What's good, y'all? It's your boy Jalen back at it again with another video on the road. And I'm just gonna be doing videos because there's nothing else to do. I need to fill my time doing something. So this video is going to be on some material that I'm reading currently. I'm reading. I might butcher the title because I don't have it on me, but I'm reading like Further Reaches into Human Nature by Abraham Maslow. Like I said, I might have butchered that title. But that book is on, essentially, it's like Maslow's, just like a summary of his work. It's just like a compiling of all the ideas that he's touched upon, and he's just putting it into, one work, essentially. So in there he talks about, again, self-actualization. I'm only like halfway through the book, but he talks about self-actualization. He talks about B values. He talks about B cognition. And how when it comes down to self-actualized people are people that are, in touch with the meaning and the purpose of their lives, and they live lives that revolve around that. But not also you have it to where self-actualization makes it to where you think honestly. You don't do things just because everybody else is doing them. You do things because you yourself have an actual interest in doing them. It could be values. So the things that you value are truthful to what you believe to be important. The things, like I said, the pursuits that you have are truthful to, what you deem to, be worthwhile in, like I said, doing. But the reason why I'm touching on Maslow, and, the reason why I'm putting a whole lot of ideas out there, is to sort of culminate into what I'm really trying to get at with the video. And with the fingers I'm going to put out there, I'm going to put one more out there, and that's hopefully I don't butcher this dude's name. Junger, right? A lot of people, like Ernst Junger, a lot of people know him from his book Of Storm and Steel. Me, I can't really read fiction all that well. I got through what was it? The Stranger, and like some of Desai's stuff, like Desai's like super book or whatever, like his famous book. Like I said, I forget the title of it, but I can't really read fiction. So Of Storm and Steel, I couldn't read that book, but I did read On Pain, and the book that's most relevant to this video is The Forest Passage. In The Forest Passage, in there he talks about similar things that Maslow talks about in his book, but he talks about it from the perspective of what it means for the individual life, in a sense. So Junger, he uses the example of like elections. So for like elections, when it comes to like an election, all you have is this option or this option. The environment around you makes it to where, you are set up to go in here and pick, this candidate or this candidate. You have advertisements and campaigns that make you believe that these are the only two possibilities for, the future of your community, and this and that. What Junger argues is that the rebel, the forest rebel, is one that says that they're going to forge their own path outside of the choices that are given to them, outside of what's being handed to them. Because when it comes down to like, the scenario that I just gave, what if both choices aren't congruent with how you believe your community should be? You're like you're going to be voting for, you're going to lose either way in that sort of sense. So for Junger, what he says is that you shouldn't play the game. You should try and find out a way to play your own game. You should find, a way to use the tools at your disposal to, not play the game that's in the way that others want you to play the game. And the reason why I'm saying this is when it comes down to humanity now, or when it comes down to the world now, you have it to where, and this is just me, this is how I feel like there's people in the world that are trying to push and trying to evolve the systems that they're a part of, and then there's a lot of people in the world right now that are trying to escape the systems that they are a part of, because they realize that these systems are not, conducive to, like I said, their actualization. And when we look at the world, we can understand why people would want to escape systems, why people would want to escape the systems that that are here. Like capitalism has made it to where capitalism hasn't really upheld its end of the bargain. With the war, we're given two sides to the war, and both sides are fucked up, right? I mean, you have it to where you have like it to where we're paying taxes to people that we don't know, in a war that we shouldn't really even be a part of. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we have it to where we're gaining sympathy towards the people that they are struggling, of course, and you do want to feel bad for them. And you feel bad for the innocents that are involved, like of course the elderly, women, the children. You feel bad for that, but you have it in the background to where if we support this culture now, then how far are we willing to permit ourselves to further support them, right? Because if we're being honest with ourselves, we don't really support their end game and their culture either. Their treatment of women and children. You know what I'm trying to say here. I mean, like if you see what's going on in Europe right now, then you know what I'm talking about. Both sides are evil, but we live in a society that Junger is talking about. We live in a society where we're in the election, we're at the ballot. I mean, my fault. And we're given two candidates to vote for, but both candidates we don't want to vote for. But the system is set in place to make us believe that these two choices are our only reality, when that's not the case. We should be able to create our own realities and to create our own perspectives. But of course, we're not really truly able to do so, and that's not just in like this department. I mean, like really, this is everywhere, right? I mean, like it's not just in this. I mean, we could even think about like something small, like something like I'd be on Reddit in the occult community a lot, and like the magic community a lot, and with occult communities and magic communities, a lot of them are going to be left-hand path, and a lot of the left-hand path people are just super fixated on using the old terminology, right? Like they're super fixated on understanding things using old terminology and old ways of thinking about particular systems. And I'm sort of saying that to say, like, okay, we're at an age now to where we've gained a whole lot of education on the body, and we understand, like, for instance, like with Kundalini and like Shiva and Shakti energy, with what we've learned with modernity, even though there's a lot of bad things with modernity, the human exploration and the human audacity that powers modernity did produce some really cool stuff. Really it produced, a mindset that, is beneficial to us in science. So, instead of studying things just purely based on like Shiva, Shakti, and like chakras and all that sorts of stuff, we could study parasympathetic responses and sympathetic responses and how they influence the body. We can explore the responses of the central nervous system. We could explore the responses of the HPA axis, right? And all of these terms sound modern and alien and cold and materialistic, but these terms are literally Kundalini, right? All I do, I just replaced, Shiva. I just replaced Shiva and Shakti with parasympathetic and sympathetic. I replaced the central channel with central nervous system, right? I replaced the chakra system with the HPA axis and all the hormones that, are secreted along that process. I just replaced it, and it's the same thing, right? I mean, at the end of the day, what's the crown chakra, right? The pituitary, third eye, pineal, throat. What's that? That's your thyroid, heart, right? Your solar plexus. That's just your stomach. We know we have bacteria and stuff in there that does play a role with our mood and stuff, right? Of course, the sacral does have to be explained, and then our root chakra, that's just our perineum and stuff. That's our prostate and all that sorts of stuff. So we've gained a whole bunch of knowledge, but again, we're placed in systems that control our way of thinking to where you can either understand things in those modern terms, or you can either understand them in those old true and tried esoteric terms. But you can't experiment and play around with the complementing of those terms and what the phenomena of one system and the phenomena of another system say about what that phenomena could be, or how you can experiment with that phenomena. What I'm trying to say is, with experimentation and all that sorts of stuff, that's what leads to actualization in the first place. Figuring out who you are is experimenting on who you are, experimenting with the environment around you to see how it affects who you are in order to understand who you truly are. And in the world right now, we're not really able to understand who we truly are because we're given choices that don't really represent us in the first place, right? I mean, we're given candidates in our country, the United States, that we don't really give a fuck about. And we know that we don't give a fuck about them because we don't know a damn thing really about their policies and all that sorts of shit. So with that in mind, what is the next step with actualization? Of course, for Maslow, for Junger, he says, you gotta just go forest rebel. You gotta go nomad. And you have to live an honest life. You have to live honest in your values and your truths despite the systems around you. That's what Junger would say. Maslow would say, sort of something similar, but he would add, a lot of what us as people have to do is we just have to model ourselves after actualized people. If we model our society after people that are actualized, then the rest of the world can become actualized. You model yourself after a healthy person, you will be healthy, right? So I agree with both of them, but the problem is that the actualized person is in a situation to where a lot of people, I'm gonna be honest, there are certain systems to where you cannot self-actualize, and you cannot self-actualize in those systems, right? There's a lot of systems in place to where if you self-actualize, you're going to be labeled as an outsider, you're going to be labeled as a rebel, you're going to be labeled as all of this, right? So in systems like that, we're going to have to, like, there's certain systems in society that we're going to have to get rid of, right? Let's just be honest. There's certain systems, certain cultures, certain ways of being that just have to get the fuck up out of here, right? Because they're not really doing anything. They're just in the way. So that's really what the problem is right now towards, this society that Maslow wants, is that the society that Maslow wants can't really come about, because the society that Maslow wants, is a society to where, choices aren't really that big of a factor. The biggest factor is like possibility. What can we do? What is our potential? Right? This dude's, again, he's humanistic, right? His view on education is, that students need to be the experience in the classroom needs to be based more around learning than teaching. So the student needs to have an attitude to where he can walk into an institution and learn anything he wants and walk out, instead of going into an institution and learning and being taught specific benchmarks and specific curriculums. Maslow is against that. So he's into possibility and all that sorts of stuff. But with the world that we live in right now, it's not really about possibility. It's about staying in lines, right? And if we there's a whole lot when it comes down to thoughts and the people that are really paying attention to the Geist of the world right now. There's a lot of thinkers that have really paid attention to the Geist of the world right now and know what's really going on. Crowley did, right? Crowley understood it with the Eon of Horus, Osiris transitioning into Horus. So, Osiris is the god of the patriarchal system. He's the god of, institutions, law, and all that other sorts of stuff, right? And I'm not saying that law is a bad thing, but law, in a sense, to where this is the final all and be all, can be questioned, and that's what Osiris represents mostly. Okay, but that transition into Horus, into Harpocrates, is all about the individual man, the man that can challenge, the man that challenges existing systems, right? Because what is Horus, right? When we go into the book of the law, he's a god of war. We're fucking shit up. We're doing, we're being honest with ourselves, and if something gets in the way, and if something has to be questioned in order to live a life like that, then so be it, right? Now, when we go into society and groups of people, I already stated in my anchors video, in anchors, we need anchors in reality. A lot of this is just going to come down to a lot of I think actualized, the actualized society is going to be, I think it might be either the society of actualized people is going to be, a society to where, that culture of people, or, that group of people, they might gain an upper hand, and they might be able to guide the world to be a better place, or that actualized culture, that actualized group of people, they do eventually meet up, but they're persecuted. A group of people that are that honest, a group of people that live in that sort of format that Maslow talks about in his book, and that Junger talks about, there can only, those sorts of people can only, they can either rule, or they either rule or they're persecuted. Like, there's no way that they can, be the middleman in a system. Like, the system will always be able to, like, pinpoint, the system will always be able to pinpoint a person like that, unless they mask up. And at that point, they're at that point they're jeopardizing their self-actualization process, because they're acting against who they truly are by masking. They're putting on a facade that they not actually are. So, like that, it's a dangerous, it's very dangerous circumstances for people like that. But, Maslow also talks about, and I think this can go back to Ebola too. He talks about that actualized people, they tend to agree on certain things. There's certain things that no matter what, they tend to agree upon, right? When he did his studies and all that stuff. And that might be what, Ebola talks about, like with the society that values the spiritual force. The actualized society is going to have certain ideas, right? And when we're saying ideas, it could be whatever. But with an honest life, there's certain things that you just understand. There's certain things that you just understand cannot be argued, right? Like, you cannot argue that exercise, that, if we have a society where everybody exercises, you cannot argue with me that that's not going to have benefits, right? I mean, if we have a society to where, you just do what you need to do. Like, if you're a cardio person, then running. If you want to do calisthenics, do calisthenics. If you want to lift weights, right? If you can't do a whole bunch, just doing something. Like a society where everybody, does some form of physical activity, you cannot tell me that that's not a bad thing, right? You can't tell, not a bad thing. I mean, you can't say that that's a bad thing, right? I'm jumbling up my words here. You can't tell me that that's a bad thing. That would be a good thing. A society to where everybody has some form of social support to some degree, that would be a good thing. There's certain ideas and certain constructs and things of nature that we know will be great to institute, right? And actualized people know about this, right? So, when we try and combine Ebola and Maslow, the society of actualized humanity is a society to where, humanity sees certain ideas out there, right? And he sees certain ideas out there, and of course, there are people in their society that encapsulate these ideas better, and they're placed into seats of power. They're representative of, the ideas and the spiritual forces that, they are looking at, and they are, the rulers or whatever. Of course, like for Ebola, it's a singular ruler. So when I'm talking about the multiple people, that would be like the aristocrat class or whatever. So again, everything can vary with how we want to implement this. I'm just speaking in terms of how Ebola sees it. So again, like with the actualized people, with the actualized society, it would be a society to where it's eternal ideas that are treasured. And how we attain those eternal ideas, there's probably going to be a lot of freedom in how we attain, those ideas. That's like a society like that would be very, like I said, I talk about Empedocles. it would be very Empedoclean. And the reason why I say Empedocles and not Heraclitus is because, of course, with Heraclitus, nature is war. Everything's changing. You don't cross the same river. Everything is fire. It's constantly, going in motion. But Empedocles, he's a little bit more modest. His system does have strife in it, of course, but his system also has love in it. And his system also touches upon the fact that we are all composed of the elements, right? Fire, water, earth, air, and we're all composed of them to different degrees. And these different orderings of the elements within ourselves are going to make it to where we conflict in certain situations, but we also gain union, and we also amalgamate to other people in certain situations. So that's how I think a society like that would be. It would be a society to where you have certain people that want to do things one way, certain people that want to do things another way, but there isn't really there's like I said, there's not an emphasis on choice, right? The emphasis is on possibility and on this humanistic idea of education, where us as people, we learn things and we explore the world better when we are allowed to have freedom in what we want to investigate, versus given like a script of what reality actually is and having to be fixated and be forced into that, which is how shit is now. So with all things considered, this video, it has a lot of ideas in it, it has a lot of talking points in it, and it has a lot of material that I try my best to talk about in a very sometimes jumbled up way in these 27 minutes. But what I'm really trying to get at and trying to sort of understand and describe is, how can humanity actualize? And we talked about maybe it being like an enclave of people that accomplish this. What does that enclave look like? What does actualized humanity look like? Because like I said, I'm not going the transhumanist route. I don't think that us being hooked up to machines, I don't think our how could you say it, course with technology illustrates. I don't think how we are interacting with technology, I don't think that demonstrates that the human being is really capable of evolution. I think that transhumanism, like the backdrop of it, represents that humanity is a failure, and that the only way that humanity can be anything is through the machine, right? I think that that's what transhumanism illustrates. For me, I don't want to take that route. I think that we can evolve, right? I mean, we have all these layers in our brain that have evolved. We had like a reptile brain, and now we're at the point where like the most recent is the neocortex. I don't think, as humans, I think that we can still make further gains. I think that we can still evolve from this point on if we just don't hold ourselves back. If we push forward, I think that we can still achieve more in our evolution without saying, well, this is it, time to just have machines do everything, because we're completing other failures and we're useless and we're imbeciles, and we need these machines, these robots to do it because we can't do it effectively. So us as humans, we can all go fuck ourselves, because that's how, let's be honest, that's That's what this really is, you know. But the only thing that I will say is we have to think about what makes us understand that these are good things. Like, yes, you know, it could be, yes, of course, the results are one piece of evidence for it, like with exercise. Oh, cool. You know, I'm exercising, and you know, my joints are great, my heart health is great. This is amazing. Like, of course, that's evidence. But what I'm saying is that there's something that is making us do this, making us understand these values are good. There's something making us be chosen to see life that way versus other people. What is that? What makes one person go through a process of actualization and not another person? It's not environment, because you have rags to riches stories all the time. It's not environment. Not only is it, you know, not environment to the sense to where you have rags to riches stories. Like I said, you have stories to where, you know, people grow up in rich families and they ain't shit. All they do is just get drunk all the time, fuck prostitutes, do all that sorts of stuff. So it's not environment, you know. It's not really ideas and philosophy, because you can grow out of the ideas and the philosophies that you are born under. So it's something else. What is that thing? I think that's the only thing that we're really going to have to talk about here. Of course, for me, I did a video talking about, you know, does magnificence just come from nature? So for me, I don't think that this is purely natural. Other people might think that this is purely natural. This is purely the fact that some people are just born different. You know, if your genes are fucked up, then, you know, that's just what it is. But for me, I don't think that it's purely genes, because like I said, you can be born to some fuck ups and be cool. You can be born to some cool folks and be fucked up. So I don't think that it's purely that. Y'all know I reference Kierkegaard a lot, so I do believe in an absolute. I do believe in God. So that's what I think it is. And I think that's the important discussion. I think the discussion that we're going to be having, as funny as it is on the existence of, now I don't think the existence of God, because we know that there's some penultimate nature to the universe. So I'm not going to say on the existence of God. I'm going to say what God is, because what God is might help us understand our own purpose, functionings, and, you know, mechanism in the universe as human beings, you know, and our consciousness and how we can evolve and all that other sorts of stuff. But anyways, this is Jalen signing out. Peace.